On this episode of the Zimbabwean Perspective Cast, we talk about Ecocash's court case with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, the effects of the combi public transport ban, as well as the upcoming PS5 launch event and HBO Max and the Justice League Snyder Cut. And a lot more. Stay tuned. Here we go. Right. Brandon Tizio, how are you, man?
I'm good, dude. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's been an interesting time, of course, in our country with everything that's going on. But in today's episode, I guess two of the things we're definitely going to cover are things that are quite pivotal. Well, we'll get into that, but we're here to talk to you about mainly the issues with public transport and changes in policy to combis. In fact, you actually wrote an article about that, and also
Yeah.
about everything that's been going on with Ecocash and the Reserve Bank. But maybe just to start people off, since this is the start of the episode, coronavirus update. We're now at a state where cases are apparently between 149 and 150 something, really, depending on your sources. There's a lot of talk about quarantine centers being escaped from because of pretty much bribery, corruption. Apparently, people are, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, people are speculating, to be exact. It hasn't been stated straight up that it's bribery and corruption, but everyone is going like, well, how are these people escaping, right? I mean, it's not like everyone who came from foreign countries is a spy or a master escapist or whatever, and
Yeah, yeah,
they're just
definitely.
jumping over walls and fences and over guards' heads. Yeah, so it's an interesting time again. People are scared, and they should be. Primary schools have actually, which are supposed to open in mid-June, have essentially, and secondary schools as well, have essentially had all those plans rolled back. Tertiary institutes, it's still in the air a bit because UZ was really about to make some big moves to start opening up again. HIT was apparently doing the same. There was word about NAST and MSU starting to also implement some moves, but it seems that might be rolled back. And of course, there's now a state of panic in the country. Let's call it that, because it's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
like, yeah, it's been like exponential growth. So everyone is wondering, okay, what's going to happen here? How are people going to go about it? And I don't know, man. What do you think?
Definitely right now with the spike due to like my repatriation, people definitely need to be careful for sure. And the government will definitely react to that by, rolling back on whatever plans they had on reopening the country. Because obviously if people like you were speculating that people might be escaping and all that, that's obviously a very big security risk. Uh, And I don't know. I just feel like even though we might have thought we were in a better position than most countries, like maybe some Africa, but with all this happening now, right now, well, it was a spike just from like around 70 cases there. And now we're hearing like 150 within like, I don't know, 2 days. So that's just, it should be worrying for everyone. And definitely schools should definitely hold back. I actually talked to someone and they were saying MSU, they might open up again, I think, but it's sort of phased opening up around maybe mid-June. Eco. I don't know Kuti, are their plans going to be affected as well by this whole thing about people escaping and whatever. But yeah, it's actually very, very worrying, and everyone should be careful, definitely, because if people are supposedly escaping, you don't know who has it and who. So yeah, just be careful, continue to practice the whole social distancing thing and all that, and we should be fine. Hopefully, if there really are cases from abroad or whatever, then we might not have too much to worry about in terms of um, if you stay home, I guess, and you don't do too much of movement, you stay within your family and your community, whatever, whatever. But if you're going outside too much, I suppose it might be a bit yeah, scary thing, I guess, because you never know. You don't know who is coming back. So if you go out and maybe they are also trying to go out as well, they're also going to pose as a risk to people out there. You go out there with people who are, I don't know,
Yeah,
it's just scary as well. It's just scary for me.
yeah, it's scary for everyone, but I guess on that same note, people should stay calm. I mean, there's less of a reason to. Okay, there's obviously someone will tell you there's reason to panic, and maybe there is, but at the same time, panicking isn't the best approach to this. So, as you were saying, stay home. Like really, stay home unless you really, really
Yeah.
need to get out. Don't go anywhere.
Mm.
Still practice social distancing, and people are getting bored. Like people are really starting to show how irritated they are with staying at home now. But yeah, do what you
Yeah,
need to
definitely.
hold back, man, because it's way worse than if you come into contact with someone who has the virus. And I mean, it's like schools. Phased opening is definitely the way to go about it for tertiary institutions and for everyone, really. But
Mm.
even if we're doing phased opening, I think let's hold back just throughout June because I mean, there's a lot more cases than there were even when the first lockdown happened. So
Yeah, yeah.
now it's definitely one of those cases where people need to know that if you're going out for a reason and like yeah, schools can't just rush to go back into because I understand it, man. A lot of these schools they take what's it called applicants in August. So obviously, I'm
Yeah, yeah.
thinking it's definitely one of those cases of they rush to finish off exams and the academic year and all that, and they can
Mm.
start afresh. But well, maybe you can't. You know, that's what happens when a virus happens. This is
Yeah,
throwing everyone
definitely.
off on a loop. You've got companies, you've got countries, you've got some of the most powerful countries in the world still being thrown off on a loop by this. You can't really just
Mm.
expect that you'll just bounce back and be unaffected.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Let's jump into some hopefully hopefully better. Okay, no, it's not. It really isn't better news,
The
but
news, yeah, definitely. The news is just not that great, man.
oh yeah. What's funny is there's American actor. What's his name? John Krasinski, I think. Um, from what's this movie called? The Quiet Place. A Quiet Place, not The Quiet Place. That one about people just being
Mm.
snatched if you make noise or something. That dude, he actually started a YouTube channel, and apparently now it's being adopted by an American broadcasting channel because it was. But he start when things started getting bad and lockdowns and all that. He started a
Mm.
YouTube channel where he just says good news that's actually happening throughout the world every day. Because it was like people
All
need
right.
motivation, so we might as well start like. No, come on, it's one of those things that
That's actually nice, though. That's
it's
actually nice.
cute. It's you know you'd be like, oh, people need this.
That's actually nice.
It
Yeah,
is
people do need this, man.
because yo with where people are and where things are right now, I don't know. I do not know.
Hopefully it gets better soon, man. Like, maybe by the end of the year, we might have something better,
End of the
better
year.
situation.
You realize you still got like 6 more months, right?
Yes, but 6 more months isn't that bad if you think of how worse it could get, you know.
I guess. I don't know. Anyway, okay.
6 months is nothing, man.
If you say so. Okay, let's actually get into this. Let's start off with the combi thing. I mean, this you wrote the story about almost yeah a week ago. We talked about it a week
Mm,
ago. This happened
mm,
about 2 weeks ago now. government essentially banning combis countrywide. They are now saying if you're any public transport company or self-privatized firm, whatever, that's offering especially specifically combis. There was also just a ban on small vehicles, but especially combis in this case. Um, you can't operate unless, of course, you sign up to work through or essentially work for Zupco, which,
Yeah.
yeah, of course, definitely had an impact on the country. We talked about this, but interesting enough, your article was because most people reacted badly, not badly, rather, reacted negatively to the whole thing. Most people don't like it. In cases like Harare, as we already said, this provides a lot of employment for the informal sector. It made Harare essentially work efficiently for a lot of people as far as transport is concerned, because let's face it, Zupcos are terrible. As far
Mm-hmm.
as keeping time and so on is concerned, you can get out of the house at 8, you can only get a Zupco maybe around 10. In some areas, that's a fact. Um, there's a lot, there's just a whole list of things. But your approach was essentially just, okay, yeah, there's definitely a whole list of bad things. But if this were to be implemented right, here are the things that are supposed to be good about, you know, if these combis would get integrated into Zuko or,
Yeah.
yeah, into a more standardized system. So I don't know, tell us more about that for a second.
I If you look anywhere else around the world, you find that the transport sector, right, there's obviously going to be like private firms, but the government has a bit of a monopoly on that because whilst most people can, of course, get into this business and make money and probably Makombi, they're probably much more efficient than Zopo. The bottom line is the government can probably do it at a cheaper rate, at a rate that can allow everyone to access transport. So obviously it's
Uh,
not for us right now. It's obviously not in the best of shape, right? We're probably still starting out, etc. So it's not exactly perfect. It's not exactly ideal. There's gonna be a lot of pushback from people who aren't really, keen on adopting this whole thing. But I really feel that if we can actually get this right, we would at least be in the right direction, going in the right direction. Every major country, every, I guess, economically sound country has the government operating transport as a bit of a monopoly because it can do so at a cheaper rate. If you have the private sector having a monopoly on that particular sector, it really forces it becomes more of a wild west rather. Like anyone just people just do whatever they feel they need to do to make profits. And
yeah, which
that's why
was
the
the
government has
case with
rules and
combis.
regulations.
Uh, Sorry, please continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I was saying that the government has particular things that they have to adhere to make sure that everyone gets this basic need. Because public transportation is viewed as a basic need in most countries. Everyone has to be capable of commuting from A to B without having to find or have too much trouble. So if I work within a particular area and I am living in an area that's much farther from that place, I should be able to just wait for a bus, board the bus, get to work, and then do the same thing when I need to come back home. But with the whole private sector thing, you have situations where combis don't get there on time, especially during the late hours or maybe during the rush hour. They come through and they have these crazy prices just because they know you have to get there, and so you have to pay. And so that's what I was saying, that it becomes more of a wild west. Everyone is doing whatever they feel they need to do to make a profit.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely always been the thing. I think it's just one of those things that Zimbabweans, especially, okay, I'm definitely giving the experience of Harare. I think we both are because that's where we're situated. That's where we know best. I have not lived in Matare for a while now. It's almost been what, 3 years? Yeah. I can't tell you how it is there. But essentially, just the Ferrari situation. You're right. There was definitely a lot of manipulation just because it's a privatized industry essentially when it's supposed to
Mm,
be a basic human need that everyone
mm,
can afford. And of course, everyone will rush to bring out that, well, when the economy was better, everyone could seemingly afford, which is true, which is definitely true.
yeah,
Um, but I guess there are still aspects that we. The thing is, when something's a necessary evil, it means you've accepted the bad that comes with it. And people had
yeah,
seemingly accepted the bad that came with combis, right? Sometimes the ride is
exactly.
crazy. Sometimes you're gonna be in a police chase. Sometimes
Yeah,
you will get stopped by cops and it'll take you a while longer than you expected. There's a whole, I mean, for women, there was all the heckling and problematic behavior from a bus terminus and so on. All those things,
mm,
really. And hopefully, if this were to fall under, I don't know, something with a little bit more order, it should get better. Hopefully, it does get
it
better. I mean,
shouldn't.
yeah,
It actually should get better, man. It has to get better.
yeah, it has to, but of course, I think that's where the big criticism here is that it's one of those things that sounds great on paper, but well, everyone will say, the government, blah blah blah. That there's always this
Mm,
sort of okay or at least acceptable idea. Then ding ding ding, things happen and they go all over the place.
mm. Now, but it's actually a thing that when you want to make progress, you have to accept that they, whatever it is you're going to do, will actually take time, and you have to accept that. You have to accept that this will take time, and will probably not have the best results in maybe 2 or 3 years. That's how progress is made. But if people aren't willing to go through those particular pains that actually take more time, then yeah, it will take. Sorry, what?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Continue.
Anyway, so I'll say that it takes time. It's something that people have to accept. Um, it, I think it's a common trend, even when you go and try and ask and try and suggest someone to try and do something new to solve a particular problem they might have. They'll probably be very skeptical towards you just because they feel like this will take too much time for me, and I think I'll be better off just sticking to whatever it is that I have, and then just going with that. But if we really want to make this work, we have to be patient. We have to understand that things take time. They don't happen overnight. Probably it won't happen in 2 years, but it will happen. It will take time.
Yeah. Okay. I can understand that. And what about, of course, the ramifications? I mean, jobs for starters. Let's not lie. Of course, the ideal situation is supposed to be, sorry, all these guys can just get what's it called hired by Zuko, become drivers, and the conductors can become, well, yeah, they'll just be conductors still, just more formal ones, supposedly.
Yeah.
But let's not let's not deny the fact that, let's face it, a lot of these drivers, it was a well-known fact, do not probably have the required documentation, let alone a driver's
Yeah.
license. It was known.
Mm.
A lot of these guys did not have a driver's
Yeah.
license. So how do you go about that? Because these guys are informal sector and informal. So sometimes ways could be found around that. But now they have to adhere to certain standards and they might just get, that what's it called, if let's say Zuko is trying to induct, I don't know, 1,000, maybe not 1,000, okay, let's say, I don't know, a couple of hundred at least, yeah, couple of hundred combis,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
that means a couple of hundred drivers, and I don't know, maybe 50 of them don't have licenses. It's probably not going to go through the
Mm.
effort of trying to get those guys set up, it's likely just going to be, yeah, you can go home. We have no use for you here, or you don't fit the bill or the mold or whatever.
Yeah, it's possible. But then here's the thing though. If you didn't have a driver's license and you were driving just because you could get around it, it's probably a good thing that now you can't get around it. You know what I mean? So now, if you want to drive, get a license, right? That's a good thing. That's actually a good thing. You know. So if you want to drive, get a license. Maybe if you have a license, you can actually apply for the job and say, "I have a license," which actually makes you qualified. So qualified for the job. So yeah, it sucks. It's definitely a bad thing when you hear of things like that, unemployment, retrenchment, whatever it is. But if you were surviving simply because you were getting around what is normally supposed to be done, then maybe it's time to start doing what needs to be done.
Well, okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I didn't put it across that way. I didn't look. I understand where you're coming from. Definitely, it's one of those cases of it sucks, but it's a, I don't know. Let's call it what. It's another necessary evil in a sense. Like there's some suffering that has to happen, but then hopefully the end goal is supposed to be better than where we started off.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, wait, fine. So we talked about definitely the drivers and them getting employed, but do you think Zuko even take everyone on? And then if they do take, not take everyone on rather, but take on all these vehicles, and if they do take them, there's obviously the issue of pay, money, right? You have all these people
Yeah.
who are now
Yeah.
being paid much lower rates because
Uh,
Zupcos or any Zupco based properties are likely going to be much cheaper. And for the record, I was actually one of the people who, when I heard this, first thing that did come to my mind was, oh, so combis might be cheaper again, which, yeah, sounds like a good thing for me, right? The customer. It is a good thing. Let me
yeah.
actually state that. But then let's not lie, there's other people on the other side of that equation, the people who are doing that work. And
Yeah.
Zuko's
Yeah.
rates, it's never really been said that they're anywhere close to good. I mean, people always say that's why the drivers, at least for the buses and stuff, are always cranky. Now what? Yeah,
Uh,
that's really a thing because we have to think about that now.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's. I feel like anywhere around the world, you're going to find that most government employees are just generally cranky because, first of all, especially employees who deal with people, right? And so, yeah, obviously the pay is going to be a problem, and but I don't know if you manage if they manage the company well, if they don't do any of that corruption stuff, if we just try and run the company, right? Take what we need, whatever combis or whatever, yeah, combis that apply to work under that franchise, and if they fit the bill, take them on, whatever, whoever you feel you want to hire those people. And, like I said in the article, I feel like because it's actually expanding as a company, so it might begin to establish a few more avenues of income, right? Which might also help in terms of pay and improvements in, I don't know, maybe building, also the construction of like whatever it needs. So because it's expanding, they might, yes, the salary might not be the greatest, but yeah, it will be something at least. It's gonna be there. It's never perfect. It's never gonna be perfect. It's never perfect anyway. You always find someone who complains whether you go to South Korea or America or wherever you go. People will always complain about the salary, especially within these government industries. But it's one of those things that you just have to say, well, it is what it is. It's not nice, probably, but it just is. That's how it is. It's not the greatest thing, but life isn't perfect and things aren't perfect, and that's just how it is. I don't know. That's how it is, I guess.
I would say I can agree with that, but there's definitely one criticism I'd have to make in that this
Yeah.
definitely seems like it's going to be something that should be. It should at least be a temporary measure. The
Mm,
all out banning part in that I understand that they should ban combis for now, considering the COVID situation, considering maybe the short trying to make this initiative work. But then I feel
mm,
like at least for not longer than a year, they should
mm.
still start some private element of transportation again because that's needed. And
Well, yeah,
yes, yeah, you were saying?
yeah. I mean, definitely the private sector has to continue to exist, right? Like you're saying that the ban for it shouldn't be for everything. Say, never again are we ever going to see a private coin because that's just not right. You need to at least have some sort of private sector which will sort of balance things out to say if you want to go with the combi, you can go with the combi. If you want to go with the Zupco, you can go with the Zupco. But like I was saying, the government has to have a bit of a monopoly. It has to control the majority, I suppose, of that. Right? And the private sector still needs to exist, but if it is to exist, it should be regulated more rigorously than it
Yeah,
is
no,
these
no,
days.
no. I agree on the regulation part. I was actually going to say sorry, there should be a reinstatement of the private sector, but the one good
Mm,
thing that can come out of this is that since Zuko has standardized things, it's no longer the
yeah,
Wild West, and the
yeah,
private sector will now need to come back in a way that's more standardized. That's a fact.
yeah,
A- And I would say, however, there's also, of course, there's the sort of middle ground, which is
yeah,
these Egonet's attempts at ride sharing. It's also called with Via, and some people have been speculating, and I guess I think we should actually maybe write something about that in more detail, but just about
yeah,
how it's an avenue, right? Via now has
mm,
shuttles, and those shuttles can technically be something that can sort of come and patch in, fill some holes at least, or fill some gaps. Like likely for lower density areas, I don't see Vias coming to, with all due respect, to higher density areas and lower areas because they'll probably be too expensive again. But
yeah,
maybe if they're what's it called, being incorporated just for lower density areas, or even for companies and stuff. I mean, there's already some companies which are now sort of using via shuttle service,
mm,
and
mm,
if something can be found for, I don't know, you've got a slightly cheaper via shuttle because it's essentially a combi now that's working for via, and
mm,
that's for companies or even for, yeah, for educational institutions even, because I would say those are your biggest commuters, workers, and what's it called, children essentially, or students.
yeah, yeah.
That's essentially your biggest markets. If they can come up with something for that, then yeah, maybe they have something worth going after there. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good avenue. It's something that could definitely work real nice. Everything really it just has to be done properly. That's my belief, and I just hope that we can do this. And I also believe that as the public, we just have to work with whoever is trying to make things work, right? Whether it be Zuko or Maya, whatever. Let's just try and work with these people. This is basically how it we can improve instead of holding on to what we are used to and refusing to move out of our comfort zones. Let's just try and work with what's happening right now. Let's try and work with that.
I'll work with it as long as they're doing a good job. That's my disclaimer. If you're not doing a good job, I'm not working with you. That's I think I think I speak for a lot of
Understandable.
people. I think I
That's
speak for a
understandable.
lot
That's
of
understandable.
people in that. Yeah, but I get where you're coming from. I definitely agree with it on that respect. Yeah, let's see where these people can take us. Let's see what they're doing. They better do a good job. And someone, someone really, You know what? It's only that right now with Zimbabwe, there's also that problem of people being robbed and so on by people
Yeah,
who are giving lifts and so on. But really, hey, free advice if you're listening to this, okay? If you're listening to this, if you're one of the five listeners of this podcast, um,
yeah,
free advice right now. Build an app that somehow works the whole lift giving thing into a system and try and make money from it. Thank me later. I need my 10%. So actually, no, thank me when you're coming up with the prospectus for this thing and I get cut in on that deal. But yeah, I think that's the first thing we can move on. Second thing would definitely be the more recent topic, which is the Ecocash and RBZ back and forth over agents and yeah, so on and so forth. You know what? You take it away.
that basically was saying that they had reason to believe that some of the Ecocash and what is it, One Money, I think, agents were involved in illegal transactions or like our illegal trade, illegal currency trade, right? And so they decided to freeze those accounts because they were trying to see if they froze those accounts, then they can begin to conduct their investigations to try and see whether or not um, these accounts are actually affecting the rates, right? So Ecocash um, basically said you can't do that. They try, I think they, I don't know what it's called in law, but it's more like they try to call for what is it? More like a petition, I think, but it's more legal, I think.
An
And so
appeal?
trying to say no, yeah, it's not like an appeal, but I don't know the real name. I
Oh,
actually read
right.
the name, but
Sure, sure. You have two
it's already
non-law
found.
degree people talking here, so we get it. We'll get a law counsel for next time.
Yeah. So anyway, they were saying that the RBZ doesn't have the right to do this, and they want to ask them to stop. Actually, they asked them to delay, right? And then they want them to sort of admit that they have no right to do this sort of thing. And so the RBZ they were dragged to court by Ecocash, and I think the High Court ruled in the bank's favor. It said that Ecocash basically didn't really have any legal reason to stand for these agents, right? Now, I don't know why that was the ruling. I I would say that it might have something to do with the relationship between Ecocash and those agents. They might not really be like employees, like they might not have the same benefits that people who work at Equinet's offices have. They might just be contractors, people who just um, do particular transactions, benefiting from a bit of Equinet's or Ecocash lines. Yes, they probably
Yeah, the
have
whole
sort of a relationship,
ecosystem
but
for Ecocash.
it might not be a relationship that warrants Ecocash to actually stand for them in court, which is why the High Court might have said it has no right, right? And it also, I think they also decided that the RBZ action, like freezing the accounts, it was legal, apparently, because the RBZ had reason to believe that these people were disrupting normal currency circulations within the country. Like, for example, I remember watching the news. Someone was saying that you would see a person's account in the morning, it would have like maybe $1 million, and then maybe afternoon, all that cash is gone, right? Like it's just gone. Yeah. So they will say that this is definitely suspicious, which is why we froze the accounts. We did not know where the money was just going off to, and it really pointed towards illegal currency trade. So we had to freeze those accounts so that we could conduct proper investigations and see what exactly is going on. And they also said that if you want to reopen account, you could always come back and apply EGCDC. So I don't know. In my opinion, I feel like the bank, since it is the authority in charge of like watching over the exchange rates within the country, if they have reason to believe that someone is doing something that is tampering with that, they might have had, a reason to actually say we're freezing this account. And in any case, you don't really uh, uh, give a person a heads up. You say, oh yeah, you close your account tomorrow. That it doesn't work like that, right? You
Of
just freeze
course,
it
of
because
course.
if you give him a heads up, obviously, take precautions. Easy. So I feel like the bank wasn't the right. Ecocash, sure, yes, it had its complaints, but according to the courts, they just could complain. That's what they were entitled to just do. This whole going to court, etc., it wasn't exactly entitled to that. So I don't know. The bank, I feel like the bank wasn't the right. Not to say I think freezing of accounts was a good thing. Nah, I just think that if they felt that they needed to, legally speaking, they might have been in the right place. So
Okay. Yeah, I understand it from that perspective, to be honest. There's just, of course, the simple fact that this is Ecocash. It's essentially become the country's third and most used currency. So every time that anything with Ecocash happens, of course, there's eyebrows raised, right? There's there's reasons to know why it's being done, and of course, with Econet in general and all its companies, well, not all its companies, but a lot of its companies, their history with government or government regulatory boards or whatnot, it's not the best one. There's often just an image of anytime something, anytime something is going on between an Econet company, an Econet subsidiary, and the government, uh, the sides are taken. Actually, to be fair,
yeah,
sides are taken, and people will say, "Hey, touch him," or "Don't touch him," or "Yeah, do this," or "Don't do that." And there's always a translation for that that happens. But in this case, you're right. I guess look, it's the law. Law's the law. We don't make
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
EcoCash doesn't make it. They definitely have to remember that because I think Econet forgets that sometimes. But
Yeah, that's definitely true.
yeah, so I guess it's just one of those things where you just have to accept that that's where things are. I mean, what else can you do? Uh of course, it's also this is a very sensitive issue. I mean, people who apparently what's it called manipulate the system or apparently manipulate what's it called the rates and the currency and so on. That's an ongoing issue that everyone's been talking about, right? And there's speculation
Yeah,
as to who's really involved. We're not really going to get into that here, but if this is in any way a legitimate lead, and if the Reserve Bank really does have any legitimate reason for this, then I don't see why they should go for it. It's inconvenient,
yeah,
yes, and of course, EcoCash, I guess, did what it thought it was right because, hey, let's face it, this is money. I mean, think about it. If a person has $1 million,
yeah, yeah.
that if Econet is getting what? How much? What's EcoCash's percentage again? I,
I don't even know. Yeah,
I should
I don't
recheck
even
that.
know. I'm not so
I
sure.
don't know. I know people charge 40% for it and you're cashing out, but I think that's like actually an
Yeah,
additional. I think I don't think it's 20%. I know it's low, but anyway, point is, even if you're getting 10% of that, that's
yeah.
a lot of
A
money,
lot.
even
That's a
by
lot. Yeah.
Zim dollar or bond standards. That's money. Okay, you don't just walk around
It's a
with a
lot. Yeah.
100 bond in your pocket, or at least unless you're one of those people, apparently. But
Yeah.
so yeah, it's quite something. We'll see how it goes. I mean, we'll see how it definitely progresses because there's definitely an ongoing case. Uh, but I don't know. It's interesting times we live in. That's really all I can say. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't know, man. I always feel like for this situation, someone actually uses the rate that the bank offers, right? So if you mess that up, that person actually legitimately gets affected. And so, yeah,
Are, are
if
there
you
people who are using
that
bank rates though? I mean, outside of like maybe completely registered and legal, is there anyone else using bank rates?
I doubt. I really doubt.
Yeah, so
Probably not.
I think here's what definitely
Hmm.
has to happen. Here's what definitely has to happen. This definitely comes down to
Hmm.
just the basis of it.
Hmm.
You can't have prices in shops being crazy and then have bank rates being seemingly, I don't know. I guess it's supposed to be stable, but here's the thing, they'll just be lower. No one wants the bank rate to be lower. No one wants something that if I were to go to a black market person and get, I don't know, 550 bond for $10. I go to the bank and I get only, I don't know, 300 and something for $10.
Yeah.
No one wants that if I'm
Yeah.
gonna go into a shop and the shop has priced something according to the street rates $10, not the bank's $10. And that's what tends to happen.
You know, the rate that shops use, yes, we call it the street rate, but it's actually probably the real rate, right? Because they're simply accounting for their own costs, right? So you won't exactly use a rate that doesn't allow you to enable you to make a profit. Sorry. So you use the rate that enables you to make a profit depending on your costs. So you use the real rate. The real rate is the one that they use, and the one at the bank, well, maybe it's the one that they are using to try and adjust for some people, try and make things, I don't know, affordable, doable, I guess. I don't know. But basically, the rate that shops use is the one that makes sense economically because if they don't use that rate, they will go under. They will make losses and they just have to shut down.
Exactly, which makes sense, except bank rates for a lot of people seem to be lower than that. So
Yeah,
if bank rates are lower, then that's where the problem is really. That's our core problem right there. No one would go to the black market if banks had good rates. Or at least less people would
exactly.
go. A lot less people would go.
Oh.
Ah, okay. Economics. Wow. Remember when this was just a tech podcast? Fun times. Fun times. Yeah,
It's all
no,
different now.
I get it. I get it. Funny enough, I guess we brought you on really for these two segments, but I thought I might as well just bring it into since this is supposed to be a tech podcast anyway. No, it's not. Wow, I need to read my own mission statement. Really. But anyway, back to what
Yeah.
matters. Back to what matters. So, Monday. Uh Pretty much one of the first things I published this week. We published actually this week. Sorry.
Mm.
Um I wrote about how Turtle really just needs to get their act together. I mean,
Yeah.
you know this. We're supposed to
Mm.
essentially migrate internet providers last week. We bought Telesol's modem and services and everything by Monday. In a time where no one wants to leave their house and shouldn't really, we still made
Yeah.
that happen. And I went all the way from Kuadana to freaking Westgate, okay, to buy this. And yeah, because Telecel hadn't, at least at that time, I don't know now, but hadn't opened any CBD offices. So there's no CBD office right now. The one in Joina City, the one in I don't know if there's another one. I'll double check, but yeah, totally gone. So fine, I make my way to Westgate. Buy the
Yeah.
dongle, everything fine, cool. Come back here. Now, to be fair, there was a power shortage at Westgate when I was buying the dongle, and they did say worst case scenario, Tuesday morning would have internet. Great, no problem.
All right.
Uh, Tuesday morning arrives, nothing. Wednesday morning arrives, nothing. Thursday morning arrives, also nothing. Friday morning arrives, nothing. Then around midday
Oh,
Friday,
no.
oh wait, there's something now. And all this time, I was calling every day to their call center, like every day. And to be fair,
Oh, man.
Teleso had a server issue. Apparently, their system got messed up, and they couldn't register new lines of any kind, in which these dongles essentially you still have a 4G line there, so that line wasn't activated. That's why it wasn't working. But what? I mean, really, what? It's no. How is it? How can you have four? That's a week. That is a week. That's a working week. You have a working week's worth of not being able to activate new customers. If anyone bought a line that week, whether for calling or for what's it called for the
Yeah.
Wi-Fi services, which for the record seem like the one good product that Telecel has right now, to be honest, with all due respect, and they they what's it called they can't activate users. Your first impression with Telecel for that week was that the internet
Oh yeah.
didn't work for
It's
up to four
horrible.
days. It is
Horrible
the
impression.
most unprofessional thing I have ever seen, with all due respect. From especially look, I'm sorry, but this is one of the country's three main telecom providers. Okay, for especially for mobile phones and so on. You're one of the three. Yeah, it's I think it's a compliment to say big three because I don't think they're big anymore. I mean, Telso has apparently approximately 800,000 subscribers now, which is terrible. Like terrible. Uh,
Yeah. I don't know, but maybe they were trying. Maybe they were trying their best, to trying to accommodate everyone and all that. So give them the benefit of the doubt, right? It's only probably like a one-time thing, right?
it,
Let's say it's a one-time thing. They'll probably do better next time, and yeah,
I
just
don't
try,
think
just
it
try to give
wasn't.
them the
I,
benefit.
I don't think it wasn't. In fact, look, let me get this straight right now because the story was being told from a very personal perspective. But let me actually just lay down why. And if you and anyone who reads the article can actually really understand this. I am rooting for Telesol here, sort of, I guess. But what I'm trying to get across, the point I'm really trying to get across is this. You are a service provider. You should provide service. And Telesol for pretty much this whole year has been an example of what seems like a very terribly mismanaged company. You can't have an era as bad as the one from last week and have it last a whole week. It a day, sure. 2 days, fine. 3 days, you're pushing it. It's a fact. There's customers who depend on you. There's people trying to sign up for your services. There's people who dependent on those services. Heck, we did. It's a fact. We did.
Yeah,
Okay, we weren't able to upload content for a whole week because of that. And this is, for all intensive purposes, a business, and a business wasn't able to work for a week because of that. And
yeah,
without making ulterior plans, of course. And that's not how you're supposed to operate. You can't be Telecel and expect to grow in number and expect to regain some customers if you're going to operate like this. You have to tighten your ship,
yeah, definitely.
you definitely have to get
Yeah,
yourself in order. So that's really the perspective I was taking it from. Like errors like that can't happen, shouldn't happen, should get fixed when they do happen much faster. And there has to be a higher ceiling and higher standard set all across the board because I mean, this is a company where there's problems about employees and their pay. Just last month, they got paid 800 bond. Apparently, some got paid 800 bond on telecash. Like that's how, yeah, that's how. Sorry, the company paid its employees. And look, I'm not going to try and get in their financial situations. I am near certain that it is nowhere near good at all. I get that. I understand that. But okay, fine. So you've got employee payment issues. You've got issues with service because it's not just me. And I mean, look, why aren't you using a Telcel line? I mean, I'll ask you this right now. Why aren't you using a Telcel line?
I don't know, man. It just never occurred to me that I could. I don't know. I just it never occurred to me, man. That's all.
It
Just
really
buy
never. That's the
internet
reason.
line. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, fine. You're better than most people then. If no, because there's always someone complaining about a Tilsa line. It's a fact. There's okay, maybe not there's always, but it's kind of become a reputation thing now. And for me personally, service has actually gotten better. Look, I wouldn't have used their Wi-Fi dongles if it wasn't that I was using my Telcel line this ever since this lockdown started. I was actually using it a lot, and their service has gotten a lot better, which I hope is not because their bandwidth is, less strained because they have less users, because that would be sad. That would be the
Yeah.
saddest upside ever. Like, oh, they have less users, but hey, my service is great. That just would be great. But here's the thing. I'm serious, man. But basically, this company has a bad reputation, terrible reputation. You're trying to fix that.
Yeah.
You don't fix it by doing this. And then, I mean,
Yeah.
there are other issues. There are products which sometimes seem like they're forgotten. I mean, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
We wrote about it earlier this year, way earlier. We wrote about how they had what are they called? Night bundles that still went for $2.50. This was when Econet was not Econet, Net One was already charging, I think, $10 for the same service. Econet doesn't even have that same promotion. But and $2.50, and that seemed like a bargain, right? But funniest thing happened, and I don't think the two are exactly related. I think it was just sort of a coincidence, but it's a very funny coincidence. We published that story. It actually got quite some traction on our site. Um, After that story is published, I think it was like a week later, they had changed them to around $10. And like, no, I'm serious. And at that time, I swear, I felt like because it they had been like $2.50 since like I don't know early that no since they got unveiled again like mid last year around June July of last year, and I was wondering who's managing this because obviously the pricing is like way off. I love good prices, but I feel like I'm stealing here. So you've got a company which has a bad rep. There are reports of mismanagement, like even from the CEO, unfortunately. They are,
Yeah.
what's it called? Reports of employees not being paid properly, to say the least. And now you've got all these problems and mistakes happening. Tesla needs to really just sit down, reevaluate its strategy. I don't know
Oh yeah.
how they're gonna go about this if they have to. I really hope it doesn't lead to firing people because that's nearly always what companies mean when they're like reevaluating strategy. And I don't even
Fine.
mean in Zimbabwe. I mean like around the world when a company is like, no, we're just going to see how we're going to reposition ourselves and reposition our strategy. It's always like, oh, someone,
Layoffs.
yeah, someone's getting fired. Someone is definitely getting laid off, and I don't want that.
That's not.
Yeah, I really do not want that. That would be terrible. I hope things go better for
Yeah.
them, but they need to get things in order, man. It's a fact. I don't know. You told me.
I mean, yeah, they definitely need to fix things. Like you said, they need to sit down, really reevaluate their strategy and their approach to, meeting customer demands and all that. They need to start making things. I don't know. They just need to start managing things proper. And honestly, if they do have to lay off someone who wasn't doing the right thing, yeah, maybe at least demote them, right? Demote someone who wasn't doing the right thing, and then try and find someone who is, or better yet, retrain them, right? Retrain them to do things the right way. Because if I'm basically reevaluating the whole company, it's probably best to just retrain everyone to trust, to try and do a better job, I guess. Because right now, I don't think, given your experience, and it's probably the same experience from other people, it's definitely not going to go down well for them. People will definitely be discouraged from even considering them when it comes to buying a line or finding an ISP, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the problem right there. And I don't know. I guess just to sort of go back into, if they're gonna reevaluate, I feel it's really sort of, to some extent, I guess, a, how can I say this? A rebirth, not rejuvenation, rather, exactly. Rejuvenation of the company. They
Yeah.
need to, like, I don't know, company CEO definitely needs to go there. I don't know if she's gonna give a big speech or whatnot, but there has to be a level of her essentially going to the whole company and deciding, hey, we weren't doing things right, okay? This is how we need to rebrand ourselves, reimagine ourselves, and this shouldn't just be one of those typical corporate hullabaloos where, oh yeah, we're gonna do better and then nothing happens. This has to be one of those things where she communicates a new or improved vision or whatever, and it has to now be something that's a plan, that, and there has to be a plan to now how they'll get back on top. Like, if they're gonna focus, for example, on just doing good home Wi-Fi and cheaper rates for that, then they need to do that to the max, right? Increase the marketing, because I don't even see this thing being marketed anymore, and it's their best deal. Like, if you're gonna say, okay, fine, we're gonna have to put a little bit more. We know we don't have money, but we definitely have to try something with the marketing budget. Do that. Heck, here's free advice, Telesol. Free advice. Do better with the social media marketing for starters. Okay, let's not even go with the expensive stuff and billboards and stuff. Nope. Chances are whoever wants this service is actually still trying to get online every once in a while. So here's the thing: troll them on Twitter, okay? Talk to them on their Facebooks. Just pay Instagram,
Yeah.
please. Just
Spam
what?
them.
It's five
Spam.
US
Spam.
dollars. It's $5 to pay.
Spam.
Exactly. Spam the ads. So do some, at least start there, all right? If they decide that that's what they're gonna focus on to at least regain some profits, then do that. Once that's done, um, work out how that money is gonna go back into your employees' hands, because please, come on, you can't be paying employees 800 bond on telecash when, funny enough, to buy this modem, right? The modem that I'm talking about right now, that goes for 1.5.
Yeah.
Literally goes for 1.5. So tell us, so employees can't even buy their own internet service.
Ah, that's just sad though.
That
That's actually quite sad.
that's wrong on a level. I'm sorry, that doesn't work at all. So do that, right? Fine. Work out a plan, work out a strategy. I don't know. Do I need to take these people to business school? Work out a strategy, work that out, get that sorted. And then once you've gotten that sorted, we can start. We can start. What's it called? Once that's sorted out, then I don't know. Execute it, and execute it at every level. Let this be something that every store manager, floor manager, support, what's it called? Support manager or technical team. Everyone needs to know this, right? Every bit of leadership needs to know that, like top, middle, and low level leadership, and they need to communicate it with their staff. And if everyone can at least know why they're doing it and at least know that this is the general direction that we're going in, then everyone can at least, to some extent, make some version of a push for it. Especially if employees will know that, hey, if all this works out well, this is actually going back into your pockets. Because I don't know if there are reports and so on of issues of corruption there too, but we're really not going to get into that because that's a whole other episode, to be honest. But
Yeah.
At least get employees involved in the rejuvenation effort and make them understand why they're doing it. And I think that the company can actually begin to turn around.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. Dear Teleso, please do better. Okay.
yeah, we'll see as time goes on. Hopefully, they do something about it.
They need to do something about it. Okay, for the sake of users everywhere. I mean, people really need to understand this. I mean, this is why TZP exists. Okay, we're not here to constantly complain and say problems about what's wrong with our country and what's wrong with technology in our country. Heck, the whole motto of this is people's lives and the technology involved in them. Tech affects your life. Chances are, no matter almost where you are in Zimbabwe, whether you know it or not, some version of technology does affect your life. It's a fact.
Yeah,
Exactly. So if technology does affect some, at least one aspect of your life, then you should be able to demand how it affects it and if that effect is good or not, or at least the quality of that effect be better, right? And in this case, in the case of companies in general, really, internet providers and so on, and in this case, in the case of Telecel, Zimbabweans, I feel, have this problem where we are we feel complaining or rather demanding what we're owed is sort of a privileged. Yeah, we act like it's a privilege in which demanding for a service you pay for or demanding for better
yeah,
service when you're paying for something is not a privilege. It's a right. You're allowed to demand for that. You're allowed to push the company that's providing you A or B to do better.
yeah.
And I mean, that's why we're here. The whole point of this site is supposed to be if technology is at least affecting some aspect of your life, which it is, whether you know it directly or indirectly, you should know about that. You should know the extent that it affects you. You should know why it affects you positively or negatively. And you should be able to make the choice on whether or not you want to say something about that, whether or not you want to hear something about that, and whether or not it's right for you.
That's true, though. Yeah, it's not always it shouldn't be taken as I don't know some sort of snobbish attitude when you try and ask for better services. It's just when the company says this is what we're trying to do or this is what we do, and they fail at that, yeah, we have a right to say, guys, you are failing and please do better. So it shouldn't be viewed as a privilege or anything like that, but it should be something that you are, I would say, entitled to. Entitled is a, I don't like that word, but I guess it's appropriate in
This is
this
the
instance.
one time when it's appropriate.
Yeah,
So I don't know. Hopefully people realize that. And gosh, you know, what? I just got an idea for another article. Internet service providers in general, their pricing during this whole time is crazy. Yo, everyone else around the world is decreasing prices. Why are you guys increasing them? It's crazy. Okay, in South Africa, South Sea is decreasing prices or starting promotion. All of the ISPs and so they rather mobile network
yeah,
providers rather they're allowing promotions or something to at least allow people to get online because hello, this is a
yeah,
time where everyone is at home. Everyone needs
mm,
information. Everyone needs to keep being in touch with the people around them or the people around the world. The
yeah.
internet is literally the common denominator to doing that now. You can't keep pricing it like it's a luxury. I'm saying
No, that's all.
they can't keep pricing it like it's a luxury, and these guys definitely are pricing it like it's a luxury. In fact, for them, it's like, oh, people are stuck at home. Yeah, this is definitely what we're gonna cash out now. No, we can't. This is too much. We can't keep living like this. You know what, Portras, if you're listening, this is where you step in. You know all those times you wanted to jump on Econet or something? Yeah, that was the wrong time. This is the right one though. So I don't know, jump on Egonet's throat, jump on Net One's throat, jump on PowerTel's throat. Okay, I'm not sure about PowerTel. Jump on Telesol's throat, definitely. I'm sorry, they at least for service providing, so that they provide better service. Okay. Jump on who else's throat? Oh yeah, jump on Zoll's just a little. All these guys need a talking to. Okay. There was a bill for Pitt's sake proposed in the US when all this started, which was that ISPs, please, A, don't increase prices, B, don't cut off people's plans during this pandemic. Like, literally, it's a bill. And most companies agree to it. There has been some issues, of course, there's been issues, but companies pretty much just agree to it. Like, okay, yeah, we're not going to increase prices, we're not going to cut off people's bills. And heck, ISPs have been providing free internet in some areas. They've been lowering prices. They've been uncapping data caps. Like, imagine you buy 10 gigs and then it becomes unlimited. That's crazy. But here it's like, nope, yeah, we don't do that. Nah, we don't do that here. No.
It's a shame, though. It's sad.
It's
We need to catch
crazy.
up with the rest of the.
We do. But then some of this is by choice. Like, this is not one of those things where it's like, oh, Zimbabwe's behind, or oh, our technology infrastructure or
Yeah,
whatnot.
I mean, mentally, though, like the mentality that these companies have, they need to catch up with the rest of the world. Like, they can do it, then why can't you at least try and think in those terms? To say, oh, let's help people out, etc.
Yeah, there's definitely a need for that. And I mean, this is still the type of country where NFC cards are sold as sort of a unique item to a certain country. I mean, those what are they called? Tap cards. That's NFC.
Oh
Guys,
yeah, yeah.
NFC is a standardized technology. Okay? In other countries, every bank has it. A lot of shops have them for club cards and whatnot. It shouldn't be something that NMB is like, oh, we introduced. So we're essentially going to, if you want NFC cards, you can come and partner with us to have them, which is essentially sort of what they apparently did with Zuko for the Zuko tap cards. So it's either use an NMB tap card or a Zuko tap card. Hey, that's standardized tech. Okay, if you want, I don't know, get licensing fees for it, but sell it to everyone else so that every bank can have it, every shop can have it. People can just
Yeah,
have a Zoopco card that doesn't cost you crazy amounts of money or that's not hard to find.
yeah.
But I don't know, whatever. Hopefully, I'm gonna jump into other segments with Nigel after this. Hopefully, they're a little happier than this because this has been a little not great. It's a little depressing.
No, but these things have to be talked about. We have to talk about these things.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we're talking about. Them. That's why I seem like I'm ranting. I'm not, guys. Okay, trust me. This is for your good.
Hmm. We have to talk about these things.
Yeah, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for joining me today. I guess I'll jump into another segment of the podcast after this, but thanks for being here.
Thank you for having.
Sorry.
I said thank you for having me on the show, bro. No problem.
Well, dude, you're gonna be having a lot more episodes, so if I were you, I'd get used to it.
Yeah, I need to.
Yeah, you definitely need to. But yeah, it was great talking to you, man. Cool. All right, and we're back with the one and only Nigel. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. This past segment has been really depressing, like the DCU as of late, except Shazam and Aquaman. Those are pretty lighthearted. Which we'll talk about later, but
Okay, that's an interesting segue, but you're here to talk to us about the PS5 and yeah, some DCEU stuff with HBO Max and the Justice League Snyder cut. Okay, but let's start with the PS5. What do you know about that, man?
PS5 is finally having a reveal event this week on Thursday, June 4th. I am excited for that, but it's just a joke. I've been thinking these guys are just gonna make you sit for an hour and just give you the logo and how the pad sounds when you're clicking it.
Nah, nah, nah. This is likely, very likely the reveal event. Hopefully it is. PS5 has infamously been traditional in terms of keeping things quiet as far as the console is concerned. Sony has definitely not really been letting too much out of the bag. I mean, we do know the main things. I mean, we know most of the specifics. We know what the pad looks like. That's the one thing that Sony's been forthcoming about. A lot of its rumble features and dual sense technology and so on and so on. Um, but I don't know. People want to see the console. I mean, and I get it. You know, you want to know if that box looks nice in your house. You want to know if you're gonna hide it behind your TV or something, or mount it on a wall, and so on and so forth. How many USB ports it has? Where you plug in the PSVR stuff. It's a thing. It's a tangible product. I mean, these are game consoles. We want to know what they look like. If we didn't want, everyone would sign up for game streaming or something, right? So it's definitely one of those things. But if they do tease us and just pull off one of those, I don't know, when they do something like what they did with CSC at CES, where they threw a lot of people in a room and they were like, "Hey, here's the PS5 logo." that would that would be crazy.
And as an added bonus, you get trigger action. Just them clicking the triggers. Like, this is some good trigger right here, man. Don't get this on any Xbox. Don't get this on PS only. What? What you want, an Xbox? Go sign up for something else, you rude.
Yeah, I don't. I hope they're not gonna do that. But this is June. This is halfway into the year. This is usually the time that they actually reveal new hardware anyway, because it's only 6 months left till the end of the year, and you know they want these people to buy these things during holiday season, December. So they're likely, definitely going to start unveiling some stuff. And we wrote an article about this and even the Justice League thing. Wrote them. They came out over the weekend. You can read about them. One thing that I definitely mentioned was that Sony better show some exclusive games because they're tagging this event the future of gaming. They definitely better show off some exclusive games because that's Sony's biggest strength right now. And even though Microsoft is coming after them for that, I feel like they still got, I don't know, let's call it experience. They know how to do good exclusive games now. You know, games that can actually be game of the year or game of the decade even. So Century, come on, man. I don't think there's gonna be.
So far.
Who's okay? Fine. Tell me one game that's gonna be game of the century.
Uncharted 2 or 4.
Uncharted
And
2.
even the latest God of War, I mean, that thing is gonna be in there. If that thing isn't in there, I will be so pissed. And the only thing so far from the PS5 that I might be actually excited about is Godfall. That looks cool.
Yeah, but Godfall is also gonna be available on the Series X. It's not an exclusive.
Yeah, I just want to see what it looks like as a next gen game, how it handles. I mean, Minecraft on ray tracing looks like doesn't even look like Minecraft. Looks like I'm playing World of Warcraft.
So you think ray tracing will just make all these games look amazing?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, look, it's definitely gonna be that. Though it's not gonna be that amazing at first. I think this always happens early in a console generation. The first year of games is gonna look like just slightly updated current games. So like PS4 games, the best PS4 games right now are gonna look a lot like PS5 games. It's a fact for about a year. Then by I don't know 2022, that's when you really start seeing the games that take advantage of what the PS5 offers. It's like when the PS3, PS4 transition period happened. Games like Assassin's Creed Black Flag were available on both consoles and looked almost the same. Uh, Tons of other games too. It was the exact same thing, and even the ones which are exclusives, things like Rise, Son of Rome, or even Forza 5 for the Xbox, they looked amazing. They did. but they didn't look like that much of a step up from what the PS3 and the Xbox 360 were able to do. So I don't think that's going to be a big thing. But here's the thing: Sony is calling this event the future of gaming, which is a little interesting because if you look at the gaming landscape and where it's going, Sony actually sort of seems like the company that's the most stuck in the past. Now let's just highlight what I'm trying to say here. The PS5 is going up against the Xbox Series X. That's a definite fact. But it's not just going up against that. The next console generation is not really just going to be a console generation. It's going to be facing game streaming. It's going to be facing a growing and more powerful advent of mobile games. It's going to be facing the hybridized approach of something like the Nintendo Switch. And of course, it will be facing the everlasting PC. But it's really changed from how it was before, where in 2013 people really were just waiting for the Xbox and the PS4, the Xbox One and the PS4. That was it. Like that was where people's focus was on. But now people are keep they keep checking on how Google Stadia is doing. They're hoping to see as much xCloud content as Xbox Series X content. The Nintendo Switch keeps going from strength to strength, and they want to see how much its streaming capabilities are. So it's 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 a different generation, and Microsoft at least seems like it's very ready for that upcoming generation. I mean, for starters, xCloud. Okay, they have arguably the best game streaming project on the market right now. Google Stadia keeps improving, it does, but it's become a tale of trial and error with Google Stadia. Like it gets better, but it goes through three or four bad ideas before it has one good one, apparently. So it's going to be great at some point, but it's definitely not great now. xCloud, on the other hand, partially just because Microsoft is still keeping it in beta, has actually performed amazingly for anyone who's used it. And they're betting a lot on it. I mean, they're betting so much on it that to a certain extent you don't have to buy an Xbox Series X because your Xbox One will be able to play to game stream xCloud games, which a lot of them are going to be for Series X alone. So those games you can still play them on your Xbox One just by game streaming them to an Xbox One, which is crazy. I mean, you're paying an extra bill just to play games that you should probably just buy the next console for, but still, and then you don't just play them on your Xbox One, you can play them on your phone, you can play them on a TV that has internet access, you can play them on your PC, you can play them on anything with a fast enough internet connection and an Xbox controller or a keyboard and mouse. That's what game streaming is doing. Mm, Sony, on the other hand, oh yeah, and Microsoft also has a partnership with Nintendo to actually bring it sort of into the Xbox ecosystem. Like you'll be able to have Xbox Live on a Nintendo Switch. You'll be able to game stream some Xbox games on a Nintendo Switch. So Nintendo is inadvertently becoming another Xbox device. This is without counting the phones that will be brought into that ecosystem through xCloud again, uh, without counting again tablets, without counting even Macs, believe it or not, you'll be able to play what are technically Windows games on a Mac PC without having to dual boot or whatever, just
Making
through
it less
xCloud.
boring.
Yeah, making Mac OS less boring. So if you think about it, man, Microsoft is making a huge move to control this shift in the gaming industry. Sony doesn't seem to be. But again, that's what next week's event is for. I don't know. I really want them to prove me wrong here because I don't want to stop playing things on Sony's side of the court. I want to stay in the PlayStation ecosystem, but then that's the thing. There really isn't a PlayStation ecosystem. They tried to be, There was a time when there was the PSP and the PS Vita came out later, and it was like you could buy the PS3 and then the PS Vita is like your companion device, and you can play some PS3 games there. And like Sony tried, they did, but they failed a lot in that respect. And maybe because they just, started playing it safe and sticking to their strengths with the PS4. Great games, great gaming hardware. That was it. But now with the PS5, they're gonna need really great games and really great gaming hardware. Which the hardware is okay. I mean, it's less powerful than the Series X, but it's fine. I'm pretty sure it'll be fine. But as far as the games, we have to see that because that's what's really gonna make people pay up if Microsoft is instead offering this whole huge ecosystem. So it's a very interesting approach that these two companies are taking. And despite the fact that Sony seems stuck in the past, it seems to want to offer the PS5 as the future of gaming. And yet the more futuristic and more powerful Xbox Series X doesn't want to present itself as the future. It kind of just wants to fit into things as they are now and then push them forward. So it's I don't know, dude. You tell me. What do you think?
Okay, first off, in terms of stuff like game streaming, I still kind of think I'm sorry, I still kind of think Xbox sort of had the cheat code already. Because remember weird that guy who sort of technically hacked his Xbox to run GTA 5 on his phone.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but then I know what you're talking about. You mean that? Funny enough, they were copying what Sony can do. So okay, let's actually go back into what game streaming is for a second. Uh the ideal case and the one that's really being sold is where I can either have a console or not have it at all, right? And the idea is I don't even have an Xbox, but I pay for xCloud. It's a monthly service. It's likely maybe, I don't know, $10 to $15 a month, right? Microsoft allows me to play a couple of games on their servers or whatever. So, as long as I'm somewhere with a strong enough internet connection, I could be theoretically, at least in America, on a bus with my 5G internet connection. I, bear with me here. And the idea is if I've got my Xbox controller, or even without it, because yeah, you can have on screen controls, but those are terrible for console games. But yeah, the idea is I can just take my phone, put it into whatever strap, and then through my internet connection, start playing, I don't know, Halo 5 or something, whilst I'm on the road going somewhere, or whilst I'm waiting in a line, though that's probably less likely, or whilst I'm at the office and bored and want to finish that level on or a certain race on Forza that I hadn't been able to finish the night before. That's the idea of game streaming. And of course, there are hybrid solutions to it. Like for example, for Microsoft, they're saying you if you have an Xbox One, if you have a Series X, and you just want to play your exact games from work, you don't have to pay for that other full service. You maybe have to pay for a lower tier, likely maybe I don't know, $2-3 a month, and you can just stream your games from work. And to be fair, this is similar to the approach you were now talking about, which was the PS4's local sort of they call it remote play, but it's actually a localized game streaming solution where if you're on your home Wi-Fi, right? Like if my PlayStation and my at that time it was Sony phones, now it's not anymore. Uh, my Sony phone or now my Android phone is around. I can connect the phone to my PS4 controller and I can play my game in my room instead of maybe the living room in front of the main TV. And that's actually still a thing. That totally works. You can do that. And Sony, give them props. They started that. And then that guy who we are talking about, who played in GTA 5 on his Windows phone, he used that same thing. Like Microsoft did want to do that with Windows phones at one point, and then they sort of abandoned the project for probably obviously because Windows Phone wasn't doing so well, but yeah. So it's very different. But yeah, you can continue. Maybe you wanted to go further and say another reason why they had a leg up on it.
Minus that, they already had the whole Windows Phone thing done. Because here's the thing about this. From what I understand with something like programming, as long as you have your source code, it's easier for you to just take it and dump it on somewhere else. So maybe Google Stadia, who's practically the new kid on the block, has that disadvantage where it has to do months of research and collecting data, whereas these guys just go copy, paste, and just change it up and done.
Well, okay, it's not exactly like that, but you're right. I agree in the terms that Microsoft has more experience, right? And they have worked with mobile devices to some extent in different ways to Google, because obviously everyone's thinking, well, Google, Android, and that's true. Google does understand Android, but Microsoft has tried some efforts of putting games on mobile devices before or streaming things for a while. Like, yes, everyone thinks Google, YouTube, Google's synonymous with streaming stuff, which is true, they do. But Microsoft has Azure and all of that cloud banking infrastructure, and Azure is doing a lot better than Google's cloud infrastructure. And with that experience, and then you combine their experience with Xbox, and then you combine some of the experience, at least with Windows Phone, and the fact that Xbox Game Studios is now making Android games even. What's it called? Forza Street, which I hate because it doesn't deserve the Forza name.
Wait, what's Forza Street again?
It's essentially a Forza tap-based racing game, something like what's it called?
Asphalt Street.
Asphalt Street Storm, CSR Racing, that type of thing. And sorry, I prefer an actual more realistic racing game. So I like real racing. I like Need for Speed No Limits. We can do that. I like Asphalt. I prefer Asphalt 8 over Asphalt 9 just because of better offline capability.
Plus nine slightly. Plus nine slightly.
Yeah, exactly. So Microsoft does have more experience here, and Sony doesn't, right? Sony definitely doesn't have as much experience with this whole cloud ecosystem stuff. So they really need to just again bring it home with the games, because if they don't, I don't know. I don't see how they're gonna survive this. But I don't know. You have anything else to add, or we move on to the DCU and not the DCU, but we move on to HBO Max. Okay. Okay. So HBO Max. Quick. Let's call it a quick refresher. It is essentially the latest in this big slew of streaming services that are coming to sort of take Netflix's crown. Essentially, I mean, especially when it comes to the US, these companies have all seen how well Netflix was doing, and they were like, you know what? It's crazy that we don't have anything there. Disney decided that with Disney Plus, Time Warner, and AT&T. So, quick history lesson: Time Warner, essentially the company that owns Warner Brothers movie studios, TV production studios. They own a lot of content, and AT&T is actually one of America's biggest internet and cell service providers. So imagine if one of Zimbabwe's biggest movie studios was owned by, yeah, let's say Econet for now. Though I guess Econet would be more Verizon, but let's just say Econet. So this Econet and movie studio like deal, they decided they're gonna make HBO Max, right? They've got tons of content to sit on. They've got tons of recognizable intellectual property. I mean, just this is what HBO Max has. Firstly, everything on HBO. So Game of Thrones, Westworld, goes without saying. Things like Rick and Morty goes without saying. Comedies. We've got all of your Two and a Half Men stuff. We've got your Big Bang Theory. We've got what's it called? We've got Friends, which is kind of being a big deal now because you kind of can't watch Friends anywhere else. HBO Max made sure, HBO made, yeah, sorry, Time Warner made sure that you can only watch it on HBO Max. So there's Friends, there's the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, There's movie franchises, tons of them. The Dark Knight trilogy, all the DC stuff, in fact. If you love anything from DC Comics, be it the DCEU stuff, so your Aquamans, your Justice Leagues, your Batman vs Superman, if it's the Christopher Nolan stuff, so the Dark Knight and whatever, if it's the Arrowverse shows, so Arrow, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, if it's the DC Universe streaming service stuff, Doom Patrol, what's it called?
Young
Titans,
Justice.
Young Justice, old Batman cartoons, old Superman cartoons. You've got old Warner Brothers cartoons like Looney Tunes and Animaniacs and stuff like that. And look, it's a long list. Okay, these guys own a lot. I mean, I'm not even close to dipping into that. I mean, there's Lord of the Rings stuff. There's a lot of stuff. Okay, and we could say outside of Disney themselves, Time Warner owns probably the biggest collection of intellectual property in the US and essentially the world over because let's face it, most of us are listening to American music, watching American based television anyway. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's not just American based. I mean, there's Doctor Who, so which is one of the biggest shows from and in Britain. So that's there. There's Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll is owned by Time Warner, so all of your anime stuff is on HBO Max. Well, not all of it, but there's that big move for anime there. And there's just this general surge of popularity in anime that's happening around the world. So that's another big thing. And look, there's that's a lot, and HBO Max has that. But somehow, I guess, just because of not having the refinement of Disney or even the experience of Netflix, sorry, HBO Max doesn't seem to know how to package all that the right way, at least for marketing purposes. And we get it. They sort of have too much stuff, so they don't know what to market, right? So, partially just to boost sales, I guess. A week before its release, because it released on the 27th of May, a week before its release here, HBO Max decided, you know what? There is the Justice League Snyder Cut, something that has apparently been existing since 2017, or in fact, since Justice League was finished filming.
I think they just watched the honest trailer for that.
They probably did. I don't know. They probably did watch the honest trailer for that. But this is funny. I'm pretty sure the guys at Screen Junkies are now thinking, "Whoa, we brought this into existence." But whatever. So they essentially saw the Justice League Snyder Cut to say, you know what? Let's put this into production and gain a huge marketing boost for launch week, which they did, whilst also probably keeping some subscribers because some people are crazy enough to stay until the movie releases in 2021. And just, I don't know, it- it's a huge win for internet fan culture. In fact, that's what the article said, that it's a win for internet fan culture, it's a win for DC fans, and it's also a cash grab for HBO Max because that's definitely why they did this. I mean, with all due respect, this isn't out of the goodness of anyone's heart. This is a cash grab. This is literal business. This is why these companies do this. And it's 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 a good thing, but it's not. It's bittersweet, sort of. It's a give and take. That's what I'm
Where's the
gonna say.
goodness of one man's heart, though?
Which man is that?
Zack Snyder.
Oh, Zack Snyder is not the goodness of his art. It's an artist wanting his art to be published.
Exactly. Just
That that's not the goodness of his art. That could be selfish. It
he's
could
the
be.
little artist that cares. You know, you the audience are like his favorite brush, and he just wants to use you guys to just paint his vision.
Oh, so we're the ones that paint his vision, the fans.
Exactly.
Right. So I guess some of you might want a little background. Look, probably most of you know the movie Justice League. Come on, you probably know this. Came out 2017, DCEU based movie, so that's DC Extended Universe. This is essentially the DC movies that have been copying sort of the same approach as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so those Avengers films. these DC films, like there's Batman vs Superman, there's Man of Steel, there's Wonder Woman, there's Aquaman, there's Suicide Squad, but let's just forget that happened.
Oh.
There's Birds of Prey and Harley Quinn. It's something I forgot, but yeah, all those films. For most people, you can notice they're essentially set in the same world and all that. And the reason for this, Warner Brothers had noticed the obvious success of the Marvel films, and they wanted to replicate that. So they wanted to replicate the success of 2012's The Avengers with Justice League. It might not have been the highest grossing movie ever, but it was definitely meant to make over $1 billion.
I actually kind of like that movie.
I liked Justice League too as well, but let's we'll get to that. But so the movie came out, and here's what had happened. During the movie's production, Zack Snyder, director and sort of actually the big creative visionary for the DCEU films, had an unfortunate family tragedy in losing a child to suicide. And when that happened, he had to step off the project whilst it was in its final phase of production. So, principal photography was done, but there was the CGI stuff, finishing some scenes, putting everything together, you know, taking essentially a bunch of scenes and making them a movie.
Wait. Would they let Henry Cavill act with his mustache? I can't handle that CGI again.
I don't know if they'll make him act with his mustache. Wait, hold up, let me finish. Anyway, so Zack Snyder stepped off the project. They had to actually, ironically, get the Avengers' Joss Whedon to finish it. But Whedon is a very different director from Zack Snyder. Plus, there was a lot of meddling from Warner Brothers. So the film that came out in 2017 was sort of a hodgepodge of ideas. Like there's some Zack Snyder stuff in there, there's some Joss Whedon stuff in there, there's some Warner Brother executive stuff in there, and you can tell how some scenes don't blend well together. You can tell how the story really just feels uninspired. Like, look, you have to understand. I'll give you an example. 2012's Avengers is not the most original story, okay? Loki comes to Earth, the good guys come together, there's some fighting at first, but they beat him in the end. They essentially become a team afterwards, right? Everyone's happy.
Art.
And that is not, contrary to Nigel saying, that is not fine art.
Art.
That's a very predictable movie, but because it was made with a certain feel, because it was made with a certain direction in mind, they were able to make something special with it. With Justice League, that wasn't the case. In fact, it was supposed to be a more intriguing and I would say more interesting film with a lot more world building and a
With
lot
edge
more
lords.
with a lot more complexity to it. But they decided to wipe all of that. Warner Brothers essentially decided to wipe all of Zack Snyder's complexity from it because Snyder's a very interesting director, to say the least. I mean, watch movies like Watchmen and 300 and you'll understand what I mean. But unfortunately, Warner Brothers didn't, and since they at that time especially they wanted their movies to just be like the Marvel movies, they scrapped his movie. And as soon as the movie came out, DC fans were furious that this was not the movie Zack Snyder made. Like they were furious. They were like, "We want our Snyder cut." I wanted a Snyder cut. Like I wasn't the biggest advocate for it. I'll be honest.
I wanted a tearjerker. Instead, I got Avengers with Batman in it.
You got a bad Avengers with Batman in it.
Exactly. It's a waste of the Batfleck's potential. I loved it.
Yeah, I loved him too. But anyway, so for 2 years people have been asking for the Snyder Cut, okay, and in different ways. There were online petitions at every fan event like Comic Con. There would always be a Snyder Cut mob of sorts. There would be every interview that had the cast of the original Justice League film definitely had someone asking about the Snyder Cut. Like
Wait.
to the point where when Ben Affleck is way done with these movies, they're still going to ask him about the Snyder Cut. So are you using?
Did they give people t-shirts?
For the Snyder Cut event?
Uh-huh.
Well, it was a live event. It was a virtual event.
No, like when they went to Comic Con, then they'd be like, "Hey, got t-shirts.
I don't know. This is not a white version of Tinema t-shirts at Jakupai. But anyway, this is a movie that's been baked for over 3 years now, and it's a win. Okay, it's a win. Let me actually say this right now. It is a win because this was not expected. And I am completely grateful that this is happening, that the Snyder Cut is happening. That being said, in the time that we're living in, it does, you can definitely see through all the blatant, let's call it what? Blatant manipulation of fan culture. Because that's what it is. It is a manipulation of internet fan culture. And it's come in a time where revivals or some kind of bringing back of projects that fans like is kind of the norm and the in thing, okay? For example, Friends is also having some kind of reunion project on HBO Max that's supposed to film soon. What is this? Last year, Young Justice, which was a cancelled show, got revived, which
Ooh,
was great, by the way. I loved it, but
with blood,
you are a very disturbed 16-year-old.
blood.
Anyway, Young Justice got revived last year. Brooklyn Nine-Nine got saved because it was supposed to get canceled at one point by fan culture again. Like we are in the golden age of fans demanding something online and it's actually coming to fruition. And that's great. That's amazing. But there is also some problems to that, which is what I brought up in the article really, which is we already live in a world that seems like it's at a creative deficit as far as movies and series are a little better. I would actually say TV series are better off, but definitely movies, like especially a big blockbuster movies, there is a lack in creativity there. Think about it. Most of the biggest movies for a year from a year are always based off of, if you're lucky, a novel, if you're or a comic book, or to this these days, a video game, a toy, like a literal toy, a TV commercial, a literal TV commercial, or they're a sequel or a reboot to something that happened 5 or 10 or 15 or 40 to 50 years before. That's the time.
Or anime movies. Do not watch those, people. Please don't. Save yourselves.
Exactly. So there's really this lack in originality in movies. And the thing is, there's not a lack in that simply because no one can think of things. No, I feel like there's definitely a stifling within Hollywood as well, in that you've got someone who's probably got a weirder, more eccentric project, but no studio is gonna pick up a weird eccentric project when they know that the next they've got what's it called? If you're Disney, especially, you're not gonna pick up a weird eccentric project when you know you still have over almost close to 100 years worth of Marvel comics to dive into and just make another MCU film. It's a fact. And an MCU film is nearly always a surefire 500 to $1 billion hit. This is a business and these guys want to make money. So I feel like in this stage where we're at the peak of internet fan culture and revivals and stuff, there's gonna be the problem where you've got some weird eccentric filmmaker with a weird eccentric film that would actually be amazing and revolutionary, but that weird eccentric film is going to be thrown aside because I don't know, Friends wants to have another reunion, you know, or Justice League Snyder Cut Part 2 is finally happening, which I totally want to happen, but I don't want it to destroy creative vision. But so this is the problem that we're living in, and I feel like now, to a certain extent, some of these movie studios might actually start doing this stuff on purpose. You know, like seemingly canceling something or taking it off for a while, then bringing it back just because they know how much hype it'll bring. Because I can tell you this: next year, when the Snyder Cut gets released, It might not make $1 billion straight up on HBO Max, but HBO Max is definitely gonna pay from it. Like they're gonna really get like a crazy spike in subscriber count. I don't know, someone might pay for a 4K HDR option if there is one. Like someone is gonna want the cinema experience of this movie, so they'll go all out and buy anything to make it better. And I wouldn't be surprised if they double dip and then decide that, oh, guess what? They're still releasing it in cinemas. Just, maybe just on a limited run or something, just because some people demanded it. Like, that's the thing with this culture of fan demands being met. Like, a lot of crazier things are possible just because, well, to a certain extent, you fans demanded it. So, I don't know, man.
Cinemas with Max. That seems like a really fun experience. Like you'll be once you're eating your popcorn, you have to like check every 2 seconds that you won't catch the virus if you remove it.
Well, nah.
Like a
I,
Mexican standoff with popcorn.
Definitely not the case, man. I don't know. This is 2021. That's when the movie's being released. Hopefully, by then we're not dealing with as much COVID-19 issues. There is, in fact, well, that's why most movies this year were moved to November, right? We've got things like James Bond, Black Widow, etc., being moved to around October, November
And those spy
period.
films.
Uh, that whole period is hopefully when the US is expecting to have recovered enough from COVID-19 and its effects. Of course, they can't tell likely, but it's of course yet to be seen. We'll see how it all goes and when these movies will actually start coming back again. It's already known that actual other big movies like what's it called? Wonder Woman, I believe. Wonder Woman 1984. That's actually coming out on. Oh, that is coming out on HBO Max as well. I think in some exclusive capacity. So a lot of people are actually asking me if HBO Max is going to survive against Netflix and Disney Plus, and I feel like it's the most likely to survive. I feel like this is the if we're gonna end up with like maybe three or four, I would say three big streaming services. This is your number three. Netflix is likely gonna stay in just because of how many years it's been in the game and how well it understands it. Even though right now they're at a very, very, very pressing point where content is now being taken back by things like Disney and Warner Brothers, and they've had to keep investing in original shows or some kind of new deals to get things going. I mean, there was the big return of Avatar: The Last Airbender to Netflix for American audiences, and like they're going crazy about that just because it's such a beloved show. And Netflix is trying to keep pushing those kind of specific what's it called, deals where you take something popular and it's not something owned by Warner Brothers or Disney. And along with making their own content, they've got some pretty impressive superhero shows on their own now, and things like The Umbrella Academy. And then they've also got this big jump in their own anime, right? Or anime based shows. So got things like Voltron Legendary Defender, got things like Castlevania, which don't fit into what you can call traditional anime, but they're sort of Western
You
anime.
have the seven deadly sins for your normal anime.
Yeah, of course they've got their anime block, but I'm saying that content can still be taken away because isn't Seven Deadly Sins on Crunchyroll?
Yeah, but it was on Netflix
Crun-
first.
Crunchyroll is HBO Max, so at some point it's probably going to be taken away.
Crunchyroll is the Disney of
Yeah, well, the Disney of anime is on HBO. So this is where Netflix is in this interesting spot where they have to make new stuff to make up for stuff that they used to have. And you've got Disney just being Disney, they own a lot of huge things. You've got Marvel, you've got Pixar, you've got National Geographic, you've got stuff from Fox, which is huge. I mean, that's franchises like
Simpsons.
yeah, The Simpsons, Family Guy, if I'm not wrong. What's it called?
American
Yeah, American Dad as well. It's a whole list. The, no. Fox News is actually staying on its own. Disney didn't buy that. They were like Fox News can stay as Trump's favorite supporter. We're not jumping in on that. But yeah. So it's an interesting time, and we wrote an old article which you guys really might want to read again. We'll share it on our social media as well. Um, and that was about how streaming services, the dream of streaming services, is already over, and Zimbabweans haven't really gotten to jumping on it. And that is the truth. Streaming services, I don't know, 3 years ago, the big pitch for Netflix even was get Netflix, you can watch everything on it. Like, especially if you're using American Netflix, because I know some people opened it in South Africa and that was more region locked. But if you're using American Netflix, it was get it, dude. You can get almost everything on it. And it's true. You could get box sets of things like Friends and The Office and even comedies like Scrubs and Two and a Half Men, Big Bang Theory. You could get the Lord of the Rings films. You could get Marvel films because at that time Disney Plus wasn't a thing yet. You could get Star Wars films. You could get old stuff. You could get the Netflix originals that were great. You could get almost anything and everything. But then all these guys decided, nope, we're coming after you, and they started pulling their stuff. Or like there were rumors that once a licensing contract would be up, they would pull it. That's why Netflix had to cancel its Marvel-based shows, things like Daredevil and stuff. That's why it started making things like its own superhero shows and anime and other comedies, in fact. So there's a whole thing here, and there's a war with streaming, which is a shame because I would say Zimbabweans only really starting to get into streaming. Like most of us are really only starting to get into streaming, and we're getting into it where, oh, you just got Netflix? Guess what, man? You now have to get Disney Plus if you wanted that stuff you wanted on Netflix 2 years ago or a year ago. Oh, you wanted to watch Two and a Half Men? Guess what? You can only get it on HBO Max now. And it sucks because, sure, in America or the UK, it's a little easier to get all of these services, but here it's not. Though, ironically, if you have a good internet connection, if I'm not wrong, okay, what does premium DSTV cost now? Maybe less. I feel like with COVID-19 and with Zimbabwe's cash crisis, it's now less. But there was a time when it was 65 for premium, a little more if you wanted with HD channels. But $65 is probably still less than what you'd pay if you were paying for HBO Max, Disney Plus, maybe Hulu, but you could pay Disney Plus with Hulu, so that would be cheaper. So HBO Max, Disney Plus, Netflix, and what else really? Is there anything really bigger? I don't feel so. Yeah, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Netflix. That would include Hulu, by the way. Um, that's still around $30, I think, per month. So it's still less than the 65. It's around DSTV compact prices, and you're getting arguably three times the content. So if you have a really good internet connection and what's it called, US dollars to spare that you can transact online, and maybe a VPN because some of these aren't locally available yet. Uh, you might want to look into that. Really, no, seriously. I don't know. It's crazy and it's a bit more of a techie thing, but there's definitely something to explore there. And I think that's really pretty much it, right, Nigel? I don't know. Got anything else?
No, I do not.
Yeah, and with that, well, you guys have a good week. I mean, you're hearing this on a Monday, I hope. So, everyone have a good week.
I hate Mondays.
You always hate Mondays. Stay safe. Uh, please, with over 132 cases or whatever, 140, 150. I don't know now. It's scary. But stay safe out there. Stay calm. Please try not to panic. Don't go out if you don't have to. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
What are you doing here? Podcast over. Press next.